Hello, my name is Gitahi Githuku. I do identify myself as a human rights defender. I am a Pan-African person and also a feminist. I'm so happy to join this conversation and be part of the dialogue that possibly can advance human rights. I highly regret that I could not join you in person at the coast. I would have loved to be part of the deliberations and also learn from all of you. However, I wish to engage on a topic of enjoyment of basic rights and fundamental freedoms, basically among the sexual minorities in Africa. And as such, I would like to emphasize a few things around my conversations that I will build on as I speak or make this presentation. I firmly believe that all human beings are equal, and as such, everyone should enjoy life. And in that enjoyment of life, abide by responsibilities not to cause harm to another human being whatsoever. I would like to also build on my understanding of dignity. I think that dignity is not something you can take away, and maybe I demonstrate how I understand it using the case of South Africa. I do not think that Black people under apartheid gained any dignity. They always had dignity. It is the understanding of some white people that they were wrong in treating Black people the way they were during apartheid. So Black people did not gain any dignity, as it were. With that understanding, I can also share an example that the globe has been having deliberations, understanding of how to engage with rights as they emerge. So human rights are not linear, as it were. We have been developing the understanding from a bigger investment in civil political rights. But now we are talking economic, socio-cultural rights. And this is what even gave room for the global understanding of who is a human rights defender and what rights those people have. As such, there was a meeting in Indonesia that adapted the understanding or how to offer protection to sexual minorities. And when these principles in Yogyakarta were being adapted, the statement, all rights for all people, all the time, not some rights for some people, some time, was coined and adapted. I do identify with this very strongly, that we cannot have fairness if some people are not enjoying their rights equally as others. In the case of Africa, there is a huge opposition to discussing sexual minority rights. And I find two arguments trying to push their positions hard. One is that homosexuality is an African. And the second one, it is abomination in religious fronts. And I think that is a base in which I wish to offer my opinion in this presentation. And this is something I really wish we could have engaged and ask questions to interrogate. On the question of Africanness, again, this is quite dynamic. I said in my introduction that I am Pan-African, Being Pan-African for me does not mean the geographic location of Africa. It is the blackness, so that if someone is in Haiti and they do identify as a Black person, they are supposed to be in the Pan-African conversation. And when you speak to culture, the African culture, this continent is quite dynamic. And we may not find really a good definition of what is African, what is not. As a matter of fact, I find it very challenging in conversations like this one, where we are having a Pan-African dialogue on homosexuality. We are speaking in foreign languages. I wish we had a common language and then build on culture, so that Africanness itself is changing. It's not static. And therefore, I find it very hard for us to agree also on culture. What is the African culture? It could vary from one place to another, from one group to another. And we need to accommodate all the diversity, as it were, whether it's religion, whether it's political, whether it's economic. But running to say that the cultures of Africa are unanimous in being anti-homosexual is also questionable on the time that when laws are being applied on this, because most of these laws are quite recent. And African culture, if there was something unanimous like that, is old. And therefore, why was it not pronounced better is a question maybe to interrogate. But I think my understanding of Africanness is maybe adapting the lens of Ubuntu. I am fine if you are, so that the other person matters a lot. And I think that using some of these conversations, saying that is not African, this is not African, while we are using the languages you use when you are wearing suits, when you are using mobile phones, is not holistic. And I think, therefore, let's respect diversity in religion, in language, in ethnicity, in the cultures that we have, and therefore also in sexuality. And we do not then use culture to satisfy other motives other than that Africanness as it is. On matters religion, in the same light, my understanding of religion is that love is the founding pillar. And then love is firstly to yourself and then to the other person. Love thy neighbor. And I think religion equally is not static. There are many Africans who go to church, they are Christians, but also conduct cultural events, the same person, and that's not contradictory. You find people going to the mosque and then later going to do cultural practices. There are people who outright practice African traditional religion practices. They are within their rights. I think encouraging room for hate, for discrimination of anyone, and specifically sexual minorities, has no space or room in religion. We should challenge this by looking at examples that we have in the Quran, in the Bible, where it's demonstrated that standing with a weaker person is encouraged, is what religion is all about, speaking out for the other person. And therefore, again, just like culture, I feel that the topics of morals, when it comes to homophobic utterances, should not be pegged again in religion. I think that we've seen a move in litigating matters of same-sex relationship, diversity in identity, and sexual minorities. And we have seen gaps that you all can help in advancing, because basic rights and fundamental freedoms, rights to associate, rights to assemble, right to privacy, are highly abused when you say that two consenting adults have agreed on mutual sexual relationship. For you to get evidence, you have to violate other rights, rights to privacy, and many other rights. When you think of healthcare, that there are some people who cannot get services because of how the caregiver perceives them, it is wrong, because it is universal healthcare that we are talking about. And the point that I'm trying to drive here is that service delivery from state is for all of us. It does not say that when you do this, you stop being a human being. As a matter of fact, we should come together and hold our governments to account that they are protecting each and every one of us equally, that everyone is getting services that they should be getting all the time. Therefore, I see as if this move that I see as evangelical driven to discriminate some of us in society is wrong, is not timely, and I think it's deviating us from very serious conversations that we should be having as Africans. Topics like colonialism and how to overcome this as Black people. What is the stand that we need to take on governance? What is the stand that we need to take on accountability of state? These conversations, we cannot have them when some parts of society, people are being left out deliberately. Let's remember, as we talk about human rights, hate does not really end. You start hating people because they are sexual minorities. Once they are fully hated, then you see women, then you'll see ethnicity. It does not stop, and I don't think is the direction of the future. Let us entertain listening to people most affected. How does this issue affect you? Let's give opportunities to learn. And I think in the point of inclusivity to sexual minorities, I encourage you as jurists, as you sit to converse, I know you are learned friends, never to rely on what you think you know. Reach out, because we see people separated from families. We see people not getting education. We see people not getting services that they really should get. And maybe it's because of the perceived hate, misconceptions that we are seeing, peddled by even some learned friends. So I will embrace religion. I will embrace my Africanness. I will embrace my feminist approaches. But I don't think there is room in all those to perpetrate hate. Mostly if this hate is going to cause harm to any person. And I think let's think and deliberate, knowing that women are left behind in many areas of governance. And in the same way, lesbian, bisexual, and queer women, transgender women, intersex women, identifying women, are also in the very margins of experiencing violations and abuse. We cannot be able to address these violations and abuse if we are not very clear that this person is a human being with equal rights. So I speak to you wishing that we could discuss this in person, hoping that these conversations helped us identify each person as a human being, be close to people who do identify as sexual minorities, ask questions. How does lack of assembly affect you? And with these learnings, be a bit humane in matters discussing law, access to law, accountability, and how each human being can live a happy, full life. Thank you so much for giving me the audience. And I think the organizers can feel free to reach out to me if any of these questions arise. Shukran.
I think I'll talk about two things briefly and then move on to the other topics. The first were the things I talked about on the children. I remember CRR yesterday during the panel discussion talking about the number of teenagers who are sexually active, procuring abortions and so forth, and essentially that it is a reality that teenagers are sexually active. That is why we are talking about Romeo and Juliet, right? And we would never have conversations on Romeo and Juliet if it was not a real thing, and that the Court of Appeal even had to talk about it themselves. So the question on teenage sexuality is not foreign, it's not strange, it is there, it is present. The question essentially that we are asking is, should it be punished in school? And that's the question. Whether it is homosexual or heterosexual, should you be expelled or suspended from school for expressing sexuality in any way? And I am saying it whether it is perceived or it is real. You understand? And I think that ties into the question of promotion and that children are being targeted. And what I want to say is that when things are invisible or not heard of, then they are now spoken about. It looks like they are being promoted, but they have always been there right in front of your eyes. And that is what you are saying about the fact that culturally it has always been there. It's not something that's being promoted, it's just being talked about. And it has not been actively talked about in public and with people over time. It's the fact that also invisibility in many contexts means vulnerability. It means that you are more susceptible to various kinds of harm. You are likely to be arrested by the police and have nowhere to run, because at the end of the day there are no systems that address what your issue is. It's like let me give you the Bible story of the lady with the issue of the blood, isn't it? The fact that that lady could not go and tell anyone that I have this problem. I just have to go to Jesus and touch the hem of the garment. She could not talk, even though she knew what that problem was. And sorry to be religious. And that is the reality of a lot of LGBTQI plus folk. This is who you are. You don't see an example of what you are in public. You don't see an example of what you are in schools, but you know internally this is what's happening to me. The same as intersex. Intersex folks didn't just jump out of nowhere, but now there is legislation about them. And I think that we have to disabuse ourselves of this whole idea of recruitment as well, because I really want to understand where this recruitment happens and who does it and so forth. As a myth, it's very attractive. It's very pretty to talk about recruitment, because at the end of the day, it riles up emotions and it makes people angry about something. But where are the facts, the reality? So just because you are invisible and you are now seen doesn't mean you're promoting. It means that now people are turning their attention to you and hearing who you are. And then suddenly you realize, oh, even this person, even this other person. The Nest did a book on our stories, isn't it? And realize that there are homosexuals who are 50 years old. Because the other thing about it is we are young here. So everyone will say it's a young people issue, isn't it? They are 50, they are 60, 70 in Kenya telling their stories. So if you are 50 and 60, what kind of life have you been living? At least perhaps the people on the panel can talk about we understand the Constitution 2010. If you are 50, what kind of life have you been living? So I think just because these folks are not talked about, and in truth, some of them died. When I had the question of suicide, the number of suicides of LGBTQI plus people is so high. In fact, one of the other issues that we deal with is drug abuse, because the fact that society is rejecting you, you don't find spaces, means that people cope with alcohol and drugs. For example, if you don't get gender affirming care, how do you cope? Alcohol and drugs and suicide, and those numbers are high. There are people who jump from balconies and we have to go and collect the bodies with the police. There are people who are murdered. I went to see Edwin Chiloba's body, and we had to view and say this is the truth and go to the family and explain. The family rejected who he is even in the burial. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. That's who Edwin Chiloba was. And you saw the pictures. But the family said, no, that's not who you are. If your family rejects you even at your funeral, what will you do? Even at your funeral, you are not what you claim you are. The family has said you are not that. What will you do? So I think that there are spaces for people to come to the point where I'm speaking out because I'm in pain, or I'm speaking out because the burdens I'm carrying are heavy, and that the more you speak out, you hear more voices, and you're like, oh, there are others like me. If you have ever been abroad and you're walking in an airport and you see only white people, and then suddenly you see, hey, that's a Kenyan with a Tusker t-shirt, what will you do? You'll run to that person, isn't it? And say, hey, tuko wawili wa Kenya, sindio? That's essentially what's happening. It's not promotion, it's recognition.
Wow. I think I'll just respond to the conversation around that we are having this conversation here in a conference, and there's a likelihood that it might end here. Then what is happening at the society? What are you going to do after this conversation? Is there, that's the question. Are you going to let it be here that I met these people at the ICJ conference and that was it? Yeah? So what I keep saying and what I keep challenging is, and the thing about changing norms, changing perceptions, invoking biases, we don't have to do it in a room. You can do it with your neighbor. You can do it with your mama mboga, the taxi driver. You can do it with anyone. You don't have to say that I've done advocacy or I've changed someone's mind when I've spoken to 40 jurists. It could be you've spoken to one person. Could be your neighbor. Could be literally anyone. So what are you going to do after this? The other thing that came about, but then aside from that, we have, aside from Legal Hack, there are so many organizations that work with and for LGBTIQ plus persons, almost 90. There are other organizations that specifically major to do advocacy with key influencers, religious leaders, boda riders, matatu operators. Some even do the same at the community level. At Nickel Hack, we also engage students through moot and debate competitions. So those conversations are happening. We are engaging the society at large. But then join us to engage the society at large. Lastly, I would want to speak on Job mentioned something about how then do we, once we recognize, how do we help? The risk of perhaps saying how do we help could easily lead to conversion practices. When you want to help me because you think there is a problem, yeah? And when I say conversion practices, we've seen instances whereby persons presumed to be either LGBTQI plus persons or are queer persons are taken for therapy, are taken for religious camps, are taken through a lot of things. So when you talk about help, let's be cognizant of how long the help goes. Thank you.
For me, it's to reiterate that this is a conversation that can begin now and take a very long time to conclude. But the important thing is actually us agreeing and appreciating you saying having an open mind and even finding it to be enlightening. We need more of these spaces, you know.
The wealth of knowledge and the perspectives shared here will undoubtedly catalyze positive justice and human rights change. I'm pleased to acknowledge that this conference has met its objectives admirably. The discussions have been robust, engaging, and were marked by a spirit of collaboration. The delegations have openly shared their thoughts and raised pertinent concerns and charted a course for the way forward. Allow me to distill some of the key takeaways that have emerged from our very fruitful discussions. Firstly, the imperative of solidifying judicial independence and accountability while maintaining a delicate balance was underscored. This includes perspectives from practitioners, civil society, and a regional outlook on the judiciary's role in upholding constitutionalism and good governance and the rule of law. Secondly, our exploration of and dissection of the intricacies of sexual and reproductive rights in Africa has contributed significantly to a deeper understanding among our stakeholders. It was recognized as a crucial legal strategy, a means to address existing loopholes rather than an end in itself. Thirdly, the pursuit of access to justice, equality, and inclusion through a human rights lens was further elaborated, emphasizing the win-win aspects of data governance. The need for additional studies on digital rights, particularly the societal impacts, was resounding. Fourthly, strengthening the framework for social transformation through access to justice was highlighted, inclusive of alternative justice resolution, ADR. The call for enhanced coordination among various institutions, including the alternative justice system, was made clear. Fourthly, robust discussion on taboos illuminated divergent views and identified misconceptions and stereotypes. While sustainable development policies have made strides, they also face challenges in generating the momentum needed for effective implementation. This session emphasized the equal importance of improving social and economic governance. Distinguished guests, rest assured that ICJ Kenya will continue leveraging the wisdom and insights from this conference to intensify our policy research and advocacy efforts. We will collaborate closely with our partners to ensure that the outcome of this AJC translates into tangible progress. It will be remiss of me if I conclude without giving a vote of thanks. To our esteemed guests, your presence at this conference has added great significance to our deliberations. Your insights and wisdom have been invaluable, setting the tone for engaging discussions and inspiring all in attendance. Our esteemed panelists, you've brought forth a wealth of knowledge, presenting diverse perspectives that have enriched our understanding of the complex issues. Your expertise has been instrumental in shaping the discussion and guiding us towards informed solutions. To our partners, Amnesty International Kenya, Center for Reproductive Rights, Katiba Institute, Optiven, and the National Gay and Lesbian Human Rights Commission, your unwavering support, both in resources and commitment, has brought together the collective wisdom and expertise we have witnessed over these enlightening sessions. Your belief in our mission and willingness to stand with us in pursuit of our shared goals is a testament to the power of collaboration. To all our ICJ Kenya members, thank you for your active engagement and unwavering support of our annual activities, especially our annual Jurists Conference, thought-provoking questions, and commitment to driving meaningful change. Your presence during the conference has made this event a dynamic and intellectually stimulating experience. Behind the scenes, our diligent secretariat, led by Ms. Elsie Saina, and the AJC focal person Vincent Kimathi, Demas Kiprono, Damaris Kemunto, and Jacqueline Umbita, have worked tirelessly to ensure the seamless organization and execution of this event. Your meticulous planning and attention to detail and dedication have not gone unnoticed, and we owe much of the success of this event to your handwork. In closing, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to each of you. Your contributions have made this event a resounding success, and your commitment to the cause is commendable. We look forward to carrying forward the momentum generated today as we continue our collective efforts towards positive change. Thank you, and safe travels back. God bless you all. Charles Mwangela, ICJ Council Member.
Asante sana. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful time in Mali.